The ships arrived on a Tuesday morning, hanging in the sky like silver promises. They came in peace, they said. They came to help. Dr. Sarah Chen stood on the rooftop of the Beijing Research Institute, watching the massive vessels hover above the city. Around her, millions of people pointed at the sky, their phones raised, capturing history. 3 years had passed since that day, and Sarah still remembered the hope in everyone's eyes. The Concordat called themselves friends. 5 alien species, working together for thousands of years, bringing gifts to a younger civilization. They shared medical technology that cured cancer in weeks. They provided energy systems that ended the fuel wars. They offered knowledge that pushed human science forward by decades. The world celebrated. Sarah celebrated too at first. She worked with the Concordat scientists, learning about their biology, their history, their vast empire spanning hundreds of worlds. They were patient teachers, always smiling with their strange faces, always ready to help. They established advisory councils in every major nation, offering guidance on everything from agriculture to space exploration. But Sarah noticed things. Small things that bothered her like stones in her shoe. The Concordat advised against certain research. Quantum computing beyond level 5 was dangerous. Artificial intelligence with true learning capability was unwise. Genetic modification of human DNA was premature. Every time humanity reached for something new, the Concordat gently pulled their hands back. "You are not ready," they always said. "Trust us. We have seen civilizations destroy themselves with such technology." Sarah's colleague, Dr. James Morrison, noticed it too. He worked in the medical division, studying the implants the Concordat offered to every human. Tiny devices smaller than a grain of rice that monitored health and prevented disease. Billions of people had them now. The implants saved lives every day, detecting problems before they became fatal. James came to Sarah's office late one night, his face pale. He locked the door behind him and pulled out a datapad, his hands shaking. "I found something," he whispered. "In the implant code." Sarah looked at the screen. Lines of alien programming scrolled past, most of it incomprehensible. But James had marked certain sections in red. "These sections here," he pointed, "they are not medical monitors. They are behavioral trackers. They measure aggression levels, independence markers, creative thinking patterns. Sarah, they are watching how we think." Sarah felt cold. Why would they need that? James pulled up more files. "I hacked into the Concordat database. It took me 6 months, but I got in." "Sarah, we are not the first. There are 17 other species in the Concordat. Not partners, client species. They have no rights, no autonomy. They serve." "That is impossible," Sarah said, but her voice was weak. "They treat us as equals." "Do they?" James asked. "Name one decision humanity has made in 3 years that the Concordat did not approve first. Name one technology we have developed that they did not give us." "We are in a cage, Sarah. A very comfortable cage." Sarah spent the next month investigating. She was careful, using old computer systems that were not connected to Concordat networks. She talked to scientists in other countries, people who had noticed the same patterns. A physicist in Germany, who was told his energy research was too advanced. A programmer in India, whose AI project was shut down for being too independent. An engineer in Brazil whose spacecraft designs were rejected as unstable. The evidence piled up like snow in winter. Humanity was being controlled. Every advance was monitored. Every step forward was measured. They were being kept at a certain level, never allowed to grow beyond it. Sarah gathered her evidence and gave it to a journalist she trusted. Within days, the story spread across hidden networks, passed from person to person through encrypted messages. The Concordat controlled the major media, but they could not control whispers. The response was swift. The Concordat announced that certain individuals were spreading dangerous conspiracy theories. These people needed help, they said. Psychological treatment, protective custody for their own safety. James disappeared first, then the German physicist, then the Indian programmer. Sarah watched the names vanish from contact lists, their messages going unanswered. She knew she was next. She made copies of everything and hid them in a dozen locations. She recorded a message and set it to broadcast if she did not stop it each day. Then she waited. The Concordat security forces came at dawn. They were polite. They smiled. They explained that Sarah was suffering from stress and needed rest. They had a facility prepared, very comfortable, where she could recover. Sarah did not resist. She went with them quietly, watching the city pass by through the vehicle windows. Beijing looked peaceful in the morning light. People walked to work. Children went to school. Everyone looked happy, but Sarah saw the truth now. Every smile was supervised. Every thought was measured. Every dream was approved. The Concordat facility was indeed comfortable. Clean rooms, soft beds, good food. Other humans were there too, the ones who had asked too many questions. They were given medication to help them relax, to help them forget their concerns. Sarah pretended to take the pills. She hid them under her tongue and spit them out later. She needed to stay alert. She needed to think. Through the facility windows, she could see the Concordat ships in the sky. They had been there for 3 years now, hanging like metal moons, never leaving. She finally understood why. They were not visitors. They were jailers, and humanity was their newest prisoner. The question was whether anyone outside these walls would realize it before it was too late. Sarah closed her eyes and hoped her message would reach someone brave enough to act, someone who would refuse to accept the comfortable chains the Concordat offered, someone who would choose freedom over safety, no matter the cost. Sarah's message did reach someone. It reached millions. The broadcast triggered 3 weeks after her capture, spreading through old internet networks the Concordat had not bothered to monitor. Text files, video recordings, data dumps, all the evidence Sarah and her colleagues had gathered, released to the world at once. The reaction was not what the Concordat expected. In Moscow, protesters filled the streets. In Lagos, workers walked out of Concordat facilities. In Tokyo, hackers crashed the alien monitoring systems. The message was simple and it spread like fire through dry grass. Humanity was being turned into pets. The Concordat responded with more protective custody. Thousands of people disappeared into comfortable prisons. The advisory councils held emergency meetings, their alien faces showing confusion. This was not how it was supposed to work. "We are helping you," they said on every broadcast. "These conspiracy theories are dangerous. Trust us," but the words rang hollow now. People remembered every technology the Concordat had forbidden. Every research project they had stopped. Every time they had said, "Not yet," and "Too dangerous," and "You are not ready." Maria Santos watched the protests from her command center on Mars. She was the director of the Olympus mining colony, the largest human settlement off Earth. Mars was too far for the Concordat to control directly. They had a small observation station there, but nothing more. Maria had read Sarah Chen's files. She had discussed them with her chief engineer, with her security team, with the 5,000 people who lived and worked in the Martian tunnels. They all agreed. Earth was in trouble. "We need to help them," Maria said at the emergency council meeting. Her security chief, Robert Kim, nodded. "But how? We are just miners and engineers. We have no weapons, no army." "We have something better," Maria said. "We have freedom. And we have brains." The Mars colony began to change. Mining operations shifted focus. Engineers started building things that had nothing to do with extracting minerals. Scientists worked through the night on projects they kept hidden from the Concordat observers. On Earth, the resistance grew despite the crackdowns. People formed cells, small groups that shared information and resources. They could not fight the Concordat openly. The aliens controlled the power grids, the food distribution, the medical systems. But humans had lived through oppression before. They knew how to resist in the shadows. A former soldier named Marcus Webb led one such cell in Detroit. He had fought in the resource wars before the Concordat arrived. He knew tactics and strategy. More importantly, he knew how to organize people. "We cannot beat them with strength," Marcus told his group, "but we can make them afraid. We can show them that controlling us costs more than it is worth." His cell sabotaged a Concordat data center. Nothing violent, just a disruption. The aliens lost 3 days of surveillance data across the entire North American region. Other cells saw this and acted. Power stations glitched. Communication networks went down. Supply chains got confused. The Concordat tightened their control. They deployed security drones to patrol major cities. They required identity checks at every corner. They locked down the internet except for approved sites. But every action made humans angrier. The breaking point came during a United Nations assembly. The Concordat had called the meeting to address the civil unrest. Their lead administrator, a tall being named Zevris, stood before the gathered human leaders. "We understand your concerns," Zevris said, his translator making his voice sound warm and friendly. But you must understand ours. Humanity is too volatile for self-governance. Your history is filled with wars and destruction. We are here to guide you past these dangerous impulses. You will be integrated into the Concordat fully. You will have a place, a purpose. You will be safe. The chamber fell silent. What kind of place? Asked the Secretary General. Severus smiled. A place appropriate to your development level. You will provide labor, resources, cultural diversity. You will be protected and cared for. Is this not better than your constant conflicts? You are saying we will be servants, the Secretary General said quietly. We prefer the term client species, Severus replied. It is an honor many civilizations have accepted. The broadcast went out live across Earth. Every human with a screen saw it. The Concordat could not stop it because they thought it would help convince humanity to accept their fate. They were wrong. The uprising began within hours. Not organized, not planned. Just millions of humans who decided they had heard enough. Workers walked out of jobs. Soldiers abandoned posts. Citizens surrounded Concordat facilities and demanded answers. The aliens responded with pacification protocols. Drones released calming gases. Sonic weapons dispersed crowds. But the humans came back. They wore masks and ear protection. They adapted. On Mars, Maria watched the chaos through delayed transmissions. She made a decision. Seal the colony, she ordered. Cut all connections to the Concordat network. And bring me the engineering team. We have work to do. The Concordat observation station on Mars sent urgent messages asking what was happening. Maria ignored them. When they sent security forces to investigate, they found the colony doors locked and sealed. Mars colony, you must comply, the Concordat officials demanded. Maria answered personally, no, we do not. You taught us technology. You gave us tools. You thought we were too stupid to understand them fully. You were wrong. Mars is now independent. We will support Earth however we can. If you try to stop us, you will regret it. It was a bluff. The colony had no real weapons, no way to fight Concordat ships. But Maria was counting on something. The aliens had never faced serious resistance. They did not know how to handle defiance. She was right. The Concordat forces surrounded the colony but did not attack. They waited for orders from Earth, orders that were delayed by the chaos of the uprising. That delay gave Maria's engineers time to finish their project. A weapon built from mining lasers and stolen Concordat reactor technology. It was crude and probably unstable, but it was theirs. Back on Earth, Sarah Chen was released from the facility during the confusion of the uprising. She made her way to Detroit and found Marcus Webb's resistance cell. Together, they began coordinating the scattered groups into something more organized. They think we are animals, Sarah told a gathering of cell leaders. They think we will accept slavery if they make the cage nice enough. Let us show them what animals do when cornered. The message went out through the resistance networks. Humanity was going to fight. Not with hope of winning, but because the alternative was slavery. They would accept casualties. They would risk everything, because freedom was worth any price. The Concordat sent their ultimatum. Submit to full integration within 1 week or face corrective measures. The response came from 1,000 cities at once. A single word broadcast on every frequency in every language, no. The Concordat fleet arrived in Earth's orbit 3 days after the ultimatum expired. 20 warships, each the size of a city, carrying weapons that could crack continents. They took positions above major population centers and deployed thousands of security drones. Commander Severus broadcast from the flagship. This is your final chance. Surrender now and the integration will be peaceful. Resist and we will use necessary force. Marcus Webb watched the broadcast from an underground bunker in Detroit. Around him, his cell leaders waited for orders. They had weapons now, stolen and improvised. Nothing that could hurt a warship, but enough to fight the drones. They think overwhelming force will make us submit, Marcus said. They have studied our history, but they learned the wrong lessons. They saw our wars and thought we fear death. They are about to learn we fear slavery more. Sarah Chen was in Beijing, coordinating with resistance cells across Asia. She had hacked into a Concordat data terminal and was reading their tactical assessments of humanity. What she found was both amusing and terrifying. The Concordat had psychological profiles for hundreds of species. They knew exactly how much pressure to apply, which fears to exploit when populations would break. Their success rate was perfect. Every species before humanity had surrendered within days of seeing the warships. But humanity's profile was full of errors. The Concordat had measured human aggression during peacetime. They had analyzed surrender rates from historical wars where both sides were human. They had no data for what happened when humans faced extinction. No model for what people did when fighting for their children's freedom. "They are using the wrong math," Sarah muttered. She sent her findings to Marcus. "They expect us to break. When we do not, they will have no backup plan." The first attack came at dawn. Pacification drones swept through major cities, using sonic weapons and gas to force compliance. In the past, this had worked within hours. Populations would flee to their homes and stay there, too afraid to resist. Humanity responded differently. People wore protection and fought back. They threw nets over drones and pulled them down. They used mirrors to reflect laser weapons. They set traps in streets and buildings. The drones were designed to deal with panicking civilians, not organized resistance. Marcus led a strike team against a Concordat supply depot in Detroit. They used explosives made from mining equipment and fertilizer, technology older than the Concordat Empire. The depot was destroyed. Its stockpiles of pacification gas released harmlessly into the air. Similar attacks happened across the world. Humans struck fast and disappeared into cities they knew better than any alien scanner could map. The Concordat forces were confused. Their doctrine had no provisions for guerrilla warfare. Every species before had either fought pitched battles or surrendered. None had done this. Severus ordered orbital bombardment of resistant strongholds. The warships fired, destroying several city blocks in Shanghai. 5,000 humans died in seconds. The effect was not what Severus expected. Humanity did not break. They became furious. Sarah had been in Shanghai. She survived by chance, being in an underground tunnel when the strike hit. She climbed through the rubble and saw the crater where her apartment building had stood, where her neighbors had lived, where children had played. She sent one message to every resistance cell on Earth: no mercy, no surrender, make them pay for every inch. The war changed that day. Humans stopped trying to minimize casualties. They stopped fighting defensively. They embraced tactics the Concordat considered insane. In New York, a resistance cell hijacked a fuel tanker and drove it into a Concordat command center. The explosion destroyed the building and killed the driver. It also took out 50 alien administrators and their security detail. In Mumbai, fighters lured drones into a chemical plant and triggered an explosion that created a toxic cloud. The drones were not designed for chemical warfare. Neither were the Concordat troops. Humans had gas masks from their own wars. The aliens did not. In Moscow, someone released a biological agent into the Concordat water supply. Nothing lethal, just something that made the aliens violently sick. The compound was created in a basement lab using public medical knowledge about Concordat biology. "They are using chemical weapons," one Concordat officer reported to Severus. "They are conducting suicide attacks. They are targeting civilians and military equally. This is not rational warfare." Severus was beginning to understand. Humanity did not fight by rules. They fought to win, and if they could not win, they fought to make the enemy regret the conflict. Every battle cost the Concordat more than it gained. "Increase the pressure," Severus ordered. "They will break. All species break, but humanity had something the Concordat did not understand. Humans had built their entire civilization through struggle. They had survived ice ages and plagues and wars. They had crawled from caves to cities while fighting every step. Struggle was not something that broke them. It was what made them human. On Mars, Maria Santos watched the war through telescopes and intercepted communications. Her weapon was ready now. Crude and dangerous, but operational. A mining laser powered by a Concordat reactor, magnified through crystals they had been mining for years. "Can we hit a ship in Earth orbit from here?" she asked her chief engineer. "Maybe," he replied. "The power requirements are insane. The weapon might explode. And even if it works, we get one shot before they locate us and destroy the colony." "One shot," Maria repeated. "That might be all Earth needs. It shows the Concordat can be hurt." She did not take the decision lightly. The colony had children, families, people who had never asked to be part of a war. But if Earth fell, Mars would follow. There was no neutrality here. "Charge the weapon," she ordered. Back on Earth, Marcus Webb was planning something desperate. Sarah's data showed the Concordat flagship would pass over Detroit in 3 days. The ship's shields were designed to stop missiles and energy weapons. But they had a weakness Sarah had found in the technical files. The shields could not stop slow-moving objects, things traveling under a certain speed threshold. Like an airplane, Marcus said. Like a plane loaded with every explosive we can gather, Sarah agreed. Flown by someone willing to die. They both knew it was suicide. They both knew it might not work. They put out a call for volunteers anyway. 300 people responded within an hour. Marcus chose a pilot named Jennifer Hayes. She was young, barely 25, with no family and nothing to lose. She had watched her entire hometown get bombed from orbit. When Marcus explained the mission, she just nodded. If I can take even one of their ships down, she said, it is worth it. The Concordat had made a fatal mistake. They had assumed humanity valued life above all else. They had thought the fear of death would make humans controllable. They were wrong. Humans valued life, yes, but they valued freedom more. They valued their children's future more. They valued the principle that some things were worth dying for. The Concordat was about to learn that lesson the hard way. 3 days later, an old cargo plane took off from a hidden runway outside Detroit. It climbed slowly, heavy with explosives, heading toward the massive flagship that blocked out the sun. The Concordat scanners saw it. They laughed at the primitive machine. Their shields could stop nuclear weapons. One aircraft was nothing. The plane passed through the shields. They were designed to stop fast threats, not slow ones. Jennifer Hayes smiled as alarms filled her cockpit. She saw the hull of the flagship ahead, close enough to see the alien symbols on its surface. For Earth, she whispered, and pushed the throttle forward. The explosion tore a hole in the flagship's hull. It did not destroy the ship, but it did not need to. It proved the ships could be hurt. It showed the Concordat was not invincible, and on Mars, Maria Santos fired her crude weapon. A beam of focused energy, powered by stolen technology crossing the vast distance between planets. It struck a Concordat warship in Earth orbit, burning through its engines. 2 ships damaged in 1 day. The Concordat had never lost ships to a client species before. Zevras stared at the reports and finally understood. This species would not break. They could not be controlled. Every attempt to force them just made them more dangerous. The question was whether the Concordat could afford to learn that lesson before humanity destroyed them completely. The Concordat fleet pulled back to high orbit. They had lost 2 ships and taken hundreds of casualties. More importantly, they had lost something they thought impossible: their aura of invincibility. Zevras held an emergency council with his command staff. The holographic displays showed a planet in chaos. Human resistance was not decreasing. It was spreading. We have pacified 14 species using these exact methods, Zevras said, his voice tight with frustration. Why does this one not break? His tactical officer, a being named Korath, studied the data. I believe we made an error in our psychological assessment. We measured human fear response during their peaceful period. But this species evolved through constant environmental threat. Fear does not make them submit, it makes them fight harder. That is illogical, another officer said. Fighting when outmatched only increases casualties. For a logical species, yes, Korath replied. But humans are not logical when threatened. They are emotional, and their dominant emotion right now is rage. Sarah Chen and Marcus Webb had the same realization from the other side. They were in an underground bunker in what used to be Denver, coordinating resistance operations. The city above was half destroyed, but the tunnels were intact and full of fighters. They are pulling back, Marcus said, watching the orbital tracking. Why? Because they do not know what to do, Sarah replied. She had spent days analyzing Concordat communications. They have a playbook. Show overwhelming force, wait for surrender, integrate the population. We are not following the script. So what happens when we do not follow their script? Sarah smiled grimly. We find out if they have a backup plan. The answer came 3 days later. Concordat reinforcements arrived from their core worlds, 50 more warships carrying ground troops and heavy weapons. This was no longer a pacification operation. It was a full military invasion, but something else came with those ships: information. Data packets that Sarah's hackers intercepted and decoded. Personnel files, mission reports, historical records. What they found changed everything. There are 17 other client species in the Concordat, Sarah told an emergency meeting of resistance leaders. 17 civilizations that were subjugated exactly like they are trying to do to us. Each one followed the same pattern: first contact, gifts, dependency, control, integration. Did any of them fight back? Marcus asked. 2 tried. Both were crushed within weeks. But there is something important in these files. Sarah pulled up a document. The concordate stability depends on willing compliance. The client species work because they believe they are partners, not slaves. If one species successfully resists, others might question the system. The implications spread through the room like electricity. Humanity was not just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for 17 other civilizations that had already surrendered. Marcus stood up. Then we need to make sure those other species know what is happening here. We need to show them that the concordate can be defied. Sarah was already working on it. I have the communication codes. If we can get a strong enough transmitter, we can broadcast across the entire concordate network. How strong? The kind of transmitter you find on a warship. They both turned to look at the orbital map. A damaged concordate warship was still in low orbit, its engines destroyed by the Mars weapon. The crew had evacuated to other vessels, leaving it as a drifting wreck. We need a ship, Marcus said. We need a crew, Sarah replied. We need to be completely insane. Sarah laughed, a sound that was half humor and half hysteria. I think we proved that already. The mission was simple in concept and nightmarish in execution. A team of 20 humans would use stolen concordate shuttles to board the damaged warship, fight their way to the communication center, and broadcast a message to every corner of the concordate empire before the other ships could stop them. The survival rate was estimated at 0%. Marcus led the team personally. Sarah went with him despite his protests. You are too valuable, he had argued. I know the systems, she had replied. And I am the one who found out about the other species. I should be the one to tell them. They launched from a hidden base in Australia, using shuttle codes that would only work for a few hours before the concordate realized they were stolen. The flight to the warship was the longest 30 minutes of Sarah's life. The ship's interior was dark and cold. Life support was failing. Emergency lighting flickered. The team moved through corridors designed for aliens, their breath visible in the freezing air. They met resistance. A small crew had been left behind to secure the ship. The firefight was brief and brutal. Humans died. Aliens died. The survivors pushed forward. Sarah reached the communication center with Marcus and 5 others. The rest of the team was dead or dying, holding off concordate reinforcements. She accessed the system using stolen codes and began her broadcast. My name is Dr. Sarah Chen. I am human, from Earth. If you are hearing this, you are a client species of the concordate. I am here to tell you the truth. Her words went out across the concordate network, carried by their own ships and satellites. Hundreds of worlds received the message. Billions of beings heard her voice. You were told integration was an honor. You were told you were partners. You were lied to. Earth was told the same lies. We refused them. We fought back. And we are still fighting. She uploaded the files, the concordate's own documents, showing the systematic subjugation of 17 species, the psychological manipulation, the engineered dependency, the total control masked as partnership. The concordate wants you to believe they are invincible. They are not. They want you to believe resistance is futile. It is not. They want you to believe you are alone. You are not. Humanity stands with you. We are fighting for our freedom and yours. The transmission lasted 4 minutes before concordate ships locked onto their position. Sarah finished her message as the walls began to glow from incoming weapons fire. Do not surrender. Do not submit. You deserve freedom. Fight for it. The warship exploded, taking Sarah and Marcus and their team with it. But their message had already spread too far to stop. On a dozen concordate worlds, beings who had accepted their role as client species began to question. Why were they forbidden certain technologies? Why were their decisions always subject to approval? Why did they never see the core worlds where the concordate leadership lived? Small acts of resistance began. A work slowdown here. A protest there. Questions asked that had never been asked before. The carefully balanced system the concordate had built over centuries began to crack. On Earth, the fighting continued. The reinforcements brought overwhelming firepower, but humanity had learned to fight without hope of victory. Every street was a battle. Every building was a fortress. The concordate captured cities but could not hold them. They controlled the surface but could not touch the tunnels beneath. Zevris watched his campaign fall apart. He had the military strength to destroy Earth completely, but that would defeat the purpose. The Concordat needed workers, not rubble. They needed integration, not genocide. But humanity refused to be integrated, and now, inspired by Earth's example, other species were refusing too. The emergency message came from a core world. A client species on the industrial planet Kareth had gone on strike. They demanded the same rights they had seen humans fighting for. When Concordat security forces tried to suppress them, they fought back. Then another world. Then another. The cracks became fractures. The fractures became breaks. Zevris finally understood the terrible truth. The Concordat had been built on a lie. They had told themselves they were helping younger species, guiding them, protecting them. But Sarah Chen's broadcast had exposed the reality. They were slavers, and slaves eventually rebel. Pull back from Earth, Zevris ordered. Return to the core worlds. We have larger problems now. The fleet retreated, not in defeat but in desperate necessity. They had come to subjugate one world and ended up threatening their entire empire. As the ships left orbit, the remaining humans emerged from their tunnels and shelters. They had lost millions. Their cities were ruins. But they had won something more valuable than peace. They had won their freedom, and they had given 17 other species the courage to fight for theirs. The war was far from over. But the Concordat had learned a lesson they would never forget. Some species could not be controlled, and the price of trying was higher than they ever imagined. 5 years passed like a scar healing. Earth rebuilt slowly, carrying the marks of war but standing nonetheless. The tunnels became monuments. The ruins became memorials. Every city had a wall where names were carved, thousands upon thousands of them. Sarah Chen's name was there, along with Marcus Webb and Jennifer Hayes and millions of others who had died refusing to kneel. Maria Santos stood in the rebuilt Beijing spaceport, looking at one such wall. She had left Mars a year ago when the colony merged with Earth's new government. The colonies were no longer separate. Humanity had learned that division made them vulnerable. Director Santos, a young aide, approached. The Concordat delegation is arriving. Maria nodded and walked to the landing area. The irony was not lost on her. 5 years ago, Concordat ships had bombed this very spot. Now they were coming to negotiate. The shuttle landed without ceremony. 3 Concordat officials emerged, led by Korath. Zevris had been removed from command after the Earth disaster. The Concordat had lost 14 client species to rebellion and was losing more every month. They needed to stop the bleeding. Director Santos, Korath said through his translator. Thank you for meeting with us. Let us be clear about something, Maria replied. I am not meeting with you as an equal partner trying to rebuild friendship. I am meeting with you because Earth wants to hear what you have to say. Nothing more, Korath nodded. The Concordat had learned to accept such rebukes. They had little choice. We come to offer true partnership, not the false kind we offered before. Real cooperation between sovereign species. Really? Maria gestured for him to follow. Then let us discuss terms. The negotiations took place in a heavily guarded building. Earth had reverse-engineered enough Concordat technology to defend itself now, but trust was still a distant dream. Around the table sat representatives from Earth, Mars, the moon colonies, and the orbital stations. Humanity spoke with one voice now. You want partnership, Maria began. Here are our terms. First, you release all 17 client species from their contracts. You give them the same sovereignty you are offering us. That is not possible, Korath said. The economic disruption would what? Make you have to do your own work? Maria's voice was ice. You built an empire on slavery. Polite slavery, comfortable slavery, but slavery nonetheless. That ends now. Korath was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. The Council is prepared to begin transitional independence for all client species. It will take time, but... You have 5 years, Maria interrupted, or humanity will provide military support to any species that wants to fight for freedom. We have ships now. We have weapons. We are not asking permission. The threat hung in the air. Earth had built a fleet in 5 years using captured and reverse-engineered technology. Nothing compared to the Concordat's might, but enough to make another war costly. More importantly, Earth had proven they would fight unwinnable battles if pushed. 5 years, Korath agreed. What else? Reparations. To Earth and to every species you subjugated. Technology, resources, knowledge. Everything we need to rebuild and defend ourselves. You want us to give you the tools to challenge us? We want you to pay for your crimes. Whether that makes us a challenge is your problem to manage. The negotiations continued for weeks. The Concordat was not surrendering. They still had thousands of ships and vast resources, but they were pragmatic. Continuing to fight humanity and the rebellious client species would cost more than making peace. The final agreement was harsh but necessary. The client species would be freed over 5 years. Earth and the other liberated worlds would receive technology transfers and resources. The Concordat would withdraw from independent space and abandon all surveillance and control systems. In exchange, humanity agreed not to attack Concordat core worlds and to allow trade relationships once trust was rebuilt. It was not friendship. It was an armed peace between enemies who had learned to respect each other's strength, but the galaxy was not empty of threats. As Earth rebuilt and the client species found their freedom, new powers watched with interest. The Concordat's weakness created opportunities. Other empires saw the chaos and made plans. Maria learned this from a report 3 years into the peace. An aggressive species called the Vrex were expanding into former Concordat space. They had no interest in subtle control. They wanted conquest, pure and simple. They are approaching 3 liberated worlds, the intelligence officer reported. They have offered those worlds a choice. Join the Vrex Empire or be destroyed. Maria felt a familiar cold weight in her stomach. What did the world say? They asked Earth for help. The decision fell to the new Earth Council. They met in Geneva, in a building rebuilt from war ruins. Representatives from every continent and colony gathered to discuss humanity's future. We are not strong enough to fight another empire, one representative argued. We just finished rebuilding. If we let the Vrex take those worlds, we show weakness, another countered. We become the next target. Maria stood to speak. We have a choice. We can go back to being isolated, protecting only ourselves, or we can stand by the principle we fought for, freedom for all species who want it. That principle almost destroyed us, someone said. And it made us who we are, Maria replied. The Concordat fell because they treated other species as tools. If we do the same, we become what we fought against. Those worlds asked for help. I say we helped them. The vote was close, but humanity chose to act. Earth's fleet, still small but growing, moved to defend the threatened worlds. They arrived to find Vrex warships already in orbit, beginning bombardment. The battle was brief. Earth had learned from fighting the Concordat. They did not fight fair. They used tactics other species considered dishonorable. They targeted command ships first. They used the liberated species' knowledge of local space. They fought like cornered animals because that was what they knew how to do. The Vrex fleet retreated after losing half their ships. They had expected easy prey. They found something else entirely. The commander of the Vrex fleet sent a message before jumping away. What are you? You are not Concordat. You fight like demons. Maria, commanding from the human flagship, responded simply, We are human. Remember that. The liberated worlds celebrated their protection, but Maria knew this was only the beginning. Earth had announced itself to the galaxy not as victims but as protectors. Other species would come seeking help. Others would come seeking to test humanity's strength. In the years that followed, Earth formed the Free Species Alliance with the liberated worlds. It was not an empire. Each world governed itself. But they shared defense, technology, and resources. They stood together because they had learned the price of standing alone. The alliance grew. Species that had been enslaved found freedom. Worlds that had been conquered found protection. And at the center of it all was Earth, the species that had taught the galaxy a simple truth. Freedom was worth fighting for, and humans would fight for it anywhere. Maria Santos stood on the observation deck of the Alliance headquarters, a space station built together by a dozen species. Through the windows she could see Earth, blue and beautiful, scarred but alive. She thought of Sarah Chen, who had died to give other species hope, of Marcus Webb, who had shown that courage was contagious, of Jennifer Hayes, who had flown into certain death with a smile, of the millions who had fought and died for a principle. They had won more than a war. They had won a place in the galaxy, not as victims or servants, but as equals, as leaders, as protectors. A message came through from the early warning network. Another aggressive empire was approaching Alliance space. They were called the Kresh, and they had destroyed 6 civilizations in the past decade. They were coming with demands. Maria read the message and smiled grimly. Let them come. They would learn the same lesson the Concordat had learned. The same lesson the Vrex had learned. Humanity did not conquer. They did not enslave. But they would not be conquered or enslaved either. And they would stand with anyone who wanted to be free. The galaxy had changed. It was no longer divided between masters and servants, predators and prey. There was a new category now. Free peoples who stood together. And at their head was a small blue world that had taught the stars a simple message. Never try to control humanity, because if you do, you will suffer the consequences. The message was received, and the Kresh thought carefully about their next move. In the vastness of space, word had spread. There was a species that could not be broken. A civilization that fought when fighting was suicide. A world that had turned weakness into strength. They called themselves human, and the wise did not provoke them without careful consideration of the cost. Earth had found its place among the stars, not as rulers or slaves, but as something more dangerous and more noble, as free people who would fight to stay free and who would help others do the same. The war was over, but the mission had just begun.